Their mentality, is you can blow a lot of smoke and say I'm for your employees and we're family oriented, but a lot of these, it comes down to big profits.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Terrance Irelan is running for House District 2, for Alabama House District 2. He is a carpenters union member. He's a firefighter, and he recently received the endorsement of the North Alabama Area Labor Council, a regional body of the AFL-CIO representing thousands of working people in the area, and he is a Republican. So that's kind of interesting. We wanted to talk to him about his campaign as a pro-labor Republican in 2022. So he is our next guest. Brother Terrance, thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's start with you personally. You're a union member. It's something that's important to you and important enough to you as a Republican to put on some of your publicity materials, despite the fact that, being a union member for a lot of people, especially in the donor class, in the Republican and the Democratic parties for that matter, being a union member will do more harm than good among a lot of those types of folks. So why is your union membership something that you're so open with?
Well, I think it's, we need to be transparent on what we stand for, regardless of what kind of party you're running in. And I know that kind of when you kind of look at unions, a lot of people kind of look at more the Democratic Party is more union friendly. But as myself, as a Republican, I'm union friendly and I'm also a union. So we see the eye on the same issues.
Right. So when we were talking earlier, you even mentioned to me that that you were part of a unionization campaign among some contract firefighters on a military base. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah. So it was a military base out in the Pacific. We had tried to unionize the department. Unfortunately, one of the other islands out there, they was part of the U.S. territory. We have a military base, and the one I was stationed at, we wasn't part of a U.S. territory. So when we got the ball rolling, everybody was all for it. We all kind of met up in the attorneys kind of met in Honolulu, and it got shot down really quick because even though everybody was for it, it came up to say, kind of outside your jurisdiction here. You're this island, this military base is on foreign soil, so you have no right to bargaining and create a union here.
Isn't that crazy? That's
yes.
That's pretty wild. Just because you're somewhere else, you got to give up some of your rights. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, our protected rights. Even though I think that we should look at in the future, look at a lot of these military installations. They're just because it's overseas. I think we should look at the way the people who works on those bases, defense contractors, Americans that's working there. Why wouldn't they be allowed to be under the same laws that back at home when they're working for the U.S. government?
Absolutely. It doesn't make any sense. If you're especially, that's one of the things that I'm very passionate about, which is whenever we're spending taxpayer dollars, we should be tying strings to that. We should be saying, look, we have certain priorities as a government, and one of those priorities is that the people that work in this country have good wages, they have good benefits, they have good working conditions, and so when we contract out work, we should not allow the privatization of of government services to come at the cost of the people who do the work. That's often that's often part of the reason that people want to privatize is because they've got some buddies that they want to cut wages and put the difference in their pockets. So
absolutely.
So, you're a carpenters union member. Can you talk about some of how that has benefited you as a member of the union? Some of the things that some of the work that you do and the benefits that you get as a union member?
So yeah, I entered the carpenter trade back in 2019. I didn't have a lot of experience. I've been in fire protection, civil fire protection for over 19 years, and most of my background is working through my local community. 19 years, I worked as a volunteer firefighter, and I served as a local board director of the County Fire Association as the fire prevention officer. And then over 7+ years, I traveled around the world working on defense contracts through Iraq, Afghanistan, the Pacific area. Um, so when I decided to give up the defense work and came back home, I was kind of looking for something to do. And as a kid growing up, my stepfather, he was a carpenter. He had his little carpenter business, and he kind of like a handyman. So I had a little bit of general knowledge. I wasn't an expert by all means, but I gave it a shot. A couple of my buddies at the fire department, they're like, "Hey, why don't you join the union? We're doing carpentry work. You can make a good salary at it. You support your family. There's good benefits. You get your pension, retirement, all that's available to you." I was like, I don't know, it's just, I don't know if I got the experience. It's like I'm gonna have to start back over again. And he's like, no, man, it's the apprentice program. You go through it. You're working and you're learning and you're getting paid for it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so it's not like you're gonna be in a college trying to get a 4-year degree and you're not gonna get anything while you're trying to go learn something. They're gonna get you the hands-on experience, and you're gonna get paid for it as you work. And that really kind of pushed me towards the union. And ever since I got in, I've always really enjoyed it. It's just the brothers you work with, they're all passionate about what they do and about each other, and we all get together. If somebody's sick or having a hard time, we all gather together and support that brother.
Yeah, that is a underappreciated fact of union membership. I think it's easy for us to talk about the better wages, the better benefits, better working conditions, all that stuff, because it's true. But there is a real sort of community there, at least in a good union. There's a real sort of community there that you're just not going to get in a non-union workplace most of the time. Bosses will want to talk about how how their family, but really the folks that you work with, your brothers and sisters on the job, they're your family. And when you're part of a union, it really helps to drive that home, and you've got that sort of community there, even beyond just the material things like wages and benefits. And basically every time that we've talked, you've mentioned that that your support for those folks down in Bessemer who are organizing in Amazon, feeling like, they deserve some of the same things that y'all do, that UPS drivers make because of their union membership, because of their organizing. And that's something that you don't hear a lot from Republicans. I mean, I talked to you earlier today about how Tuberville, he has spent time actively trying to discourage these workers down in Bessemer from unionizing, saying that we need to be a business-friendly state. How do you see that as a Republican, but somebody who believes that workers should unionize, believe that workers deserve to be in a union, deserve the benefits that come along with that? How do you see that as a Republican, knowing that so many of your, people in the same party as you disagree on that?
Well, I agree. We do want to be a business-friendly state, but we also have to make sure that employees and the people working these business we're trying to draw in, they have a good paying wage and they're able to support their family. And you can work at a normal business and work a 40-hour job, and by the time you get your paycheck and you look at it and you're like, and after you've already deducted your family insurance, which is, up there around $600-700 for like family encourage for insurance, you going home with nothing, and you're still on SNAP benefits after working a 40-hour job, after you've paid your medical insurance. How can you survive on something like that? I mean, that's not very friendly, employee friendly. I mean, if a hardworking man cannot support his family working a 40-hour job, and he still have to rely on the government assistance. So I think there's a lot of times you look at the businesses and they're for profit more than taking care of their employees. And then there's a lot of people will blow smoke of, oh, we're family oriented company and we love our employees. But when it comes down to the core values of what they support, you'll find that their directive is definitely not for the employees. I was involved in some management of a local big box store one time, and I felt that the big box store, they look at them and they always make these kind of like Amazon. They have a point system. You miss so many days, or you're out of there. I mean, it becomes a problem because they want to say that we're loving and supporting of our employees and we're family owned, but every employee is going to have ups and downs in life. And so one of the big got me is how one of my employees was having to go through a hardship. He just had a daughter, and then she was in a neonatal care, and he was missing a lot of days. And it's understandable. I mean, who wouldn't want to be there holding your child's hand and going through that hard time? I mean, it's an infant. And it got to the point where, upper management's like, yeah, he's already missed too many days. Let's get rid of him. I'm like, wait a minute. This guy is he's the only funds in his family right now is coming from him. I mean, regardless, he's missing a lot of days. He is making some, and we're adjusting his schedule. We're just going to kind of kick him down in the dirt some more. I mean, I thought we're for the people and the employees here. And their mentality, is you can blow a lot of smoke and say, I'm for your employees and we're family oriented, but a lot of these, it comes down to big profits,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's, it's so frustrating because it's so easy to just have somebody else pick up that shift or hire somebody else, if somebody needs to go down to part-time, to bring somebody else in. I mean, it's so easy to accommodate people's schedules. And, like you said, there are a lot of people, a lot of businesses that won't even do that much for their employees, much less, give them a good wage. So, let's talk about your campaign for a little bit then. Why did you decide to run for State House?
So, I decided to run. I've served my community for 19 years. In the volunteer service, fire protection, serve on our local fire board, and also done it for paid service on federal contracting. So I've served my community for many years, and it's about nothing about the money. I mean, a legislator in Alabama doesn't make a lot of money. I can easily make the same amount of money more working construction. But I feel like we need to address some of the issues that's facing our state, and my service can be better by the legislators trying to address those issues. And I feel like I can build a confidence of the people that I serve. I've served this community and this state for over 19 years, and that kind of pushed me in this direction to continue to serve the people.
Yeah, well, so what are some of the things that you'd like to push if you're elected down in Montgomery? What are some of the things that you'd like to try to get done to support working people in this state?
So, some of the voices I've heard in the state. I talked to one of our university professors. We can look at some of the ways that how we treat paternity leave in the state. We need something. Say you're a new employee. You come in, you're not eligible for the FMLA because you don't have a year of service. So what happens? Usually, going back to my big box store that I worked at, you're tough luck. If you ain't been here a year, you're pregnant, you're gone. You're not going to take off, 3, 4, 5 weeks to have your kid. We need to look at how we can change that. Make something in the state legislation, make a little bit of protection for females that's going through a pregnancy. Get a little bit, even though they're not protected by the federal, at the state level, we can adopt something, give them a little bit more protection. You see a lot of countries all over the world that has like maternity leave for women, but we don't have anything in this country unless you have a year of service. Another
And
thing
even
is,
after a year of service, that's only protected unpaid leave. I mean,
yes,
I worked in a restaurant for 3 years, and I worked with a woman who had worked at that restaurant since it opened. It opened in 2015, and this happened in 2018, and she was pregnant in 2018, and she worked until literally the day before she gave birth. I mean, I'm talking, she went into the hospital after she clocked out to go give birth. And then she was back at work 2 days later because, she's working at a restaurant, right? She's a server. She doesn't have money. She couldn't do, even if she could have taken unpaid leave, she couldn't afford to take unpaid leave. She was a single mother, so she had to come right back to work 2 days after giving birth. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
I was going to jump in here, Terrance, because I just want to say I really appreciate you bringing that issue up. And Jacob, the story you shared is, unfortunately, that's all too common. And I think a lot of folks may not realize that, of course, I'm going to bring back my public school experience. Public educators are overwhelmingly women. We know that teachers are, by and large, it's a female workforce. And even though teachers do earn paid sick leave, there is no maternity leave for teachers in the state of Alabama. So you're talking about a workforce that is predominantly female. The majority of your teachers are going to be pregnant at some point, but there's no paid maternity leave there. And like you mentioned, Terrance, you've got restrictions on to even qualify for FMLA, and that's, you hope that you have built up enough sick days. But, there are so many teachers out there who go into debt to the sick leave bank or who end up leaving the profession, either temporarily or permanently. So, we hear a lot of discussion from Montgomery about recruiting and retaining teachers. This is a key issue there. And it goes beyond that into the private sector, like you mentioned, Jacob, because when you have these paid leave policies and maternity leave policies, these folks can come back. That's one less person you're going to have to train and get on board with your company. So it just makes a lot of sense from an economic standpoint, beyond the fact that it's really the right thing to do for people and in a state that talks about family values.
I mean, you talked about that. That you reckon, a fella ought to be able to support his family, and if his wife doesn't want to work, she would rather stay home and raise her kids. I think that's admirable,
Right.
and I think that more folks ought to have that as an option. And it's just so sad that today we don't have that. You were talking about maternity leave and things like that. I believe in New York, they've recently passed a law that there's some combination of like a requirement on employers to put some money into this fund and then some amount of tax dollars that go towards a paid maternity and paternity leave that's like, I don't know, 60, 70% of what you make. Is that the kind of thing that you're talking about, or are you just talking about job protections, like extending FMLA protections beyond,
I think we need to extend the FMLA protections. I kind of look at our workers' compensation. How many workers you have that will work the entire lifetime, will never draw unemployment because they've been employed the entire life. They've paid it, there's been benefits paid into them in case that ever happens. So why couldn't we as a state have a bill passed that we can actually, for a young mother or a mother is going through a pregnancy or is actually giving birth, give them a little bit of protection. Could we pay for them to be off for a year? I don't know. We could start that high, but it's better than nothing. They have nothing now. They're going to be home unpaid. At least give them something, 8, 12 weeks of a little compensation. And I think we could pass it through the unemployment compensation. It'd be something to be protected. Maybe it's not they wouldn't get the full compensation of working what they would make at workplace, their full salary, but at least they would have something to help them while they're off work.
Yeah, I think that's important, and like you said, it's they've got nothing now, so looking at even 30-40% of their salary would be better than where we're at now, and that could help somebody be able to stay 30, 40, 50% of their salary stay at home during that critical time, looking at 8 to 12 weeks after the birth of their child. I think that's a critical time in development, and it'd be helpful for the child and the mother, I think. What about, you're obviously a supporter of unions, and we know that unions are a good way for workers to bring up their wages and working conditions themselves. You mentioned that, you were interested in the PRO Act on a national level. What kind of things do you think on a state level could be done to make it more easier for workers to organize, to make it more difficult for bosses to interfere in that process?
Some of the things I think we need to look at is when we do capital projects is funded by taxpayer money, whether it be a coliseum or a bridge or infrastructure upgrades. Whenever you're using taxpayer money and you're that where you're get that taxpayer money from, whether it be a ad valorem tax or a tobacco tax, the people those taxes are paid for, the local people. Why shouldn't they be allowed to build that project, use a local workforce, allow them the opportunity to bargain for their collective wages, because they're the ones that's building that. I mean, their money and it's their tax, their money is building that project. I think we need to look at that. Anything over, a certain percentage, we're gonna have to look at a dollar figure here. It needs to be competitive bid out, but also needs that labor agreement in there where they can bargain on their agreement on the terms.
So there's a bill that has been that's been introduced this year and last year, a quote-unquote anti-riot bill that would allow the police to arrest people for quote-unquote rioting, even if they haven't damaged any property or hurt anybody, held for 24 hours before conviction, held in prison, held in jail for 30 days if they're convicted of rioting. It would, that's one of the most damaging things. But that just passed the state house a couple of weeks ago. Where would you stand on a bill like that?
So I was reading the bill, and I think there's a lot of loopholes in there. I think, as general when it was passed, it may have met good, but there's too many loopholes, and there needs to be fixed before that, because a lot of innocent people are going to be affected by that. Just by looking at the bill, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. You need to protect one side so both sides doesn't get cut. I understand the aspect of trying to protect the property in a city from violent protests. And when I say violent, we need to look at who's involved in the protest that's making it violent. We can't just generally say the entire crowd is a violent protester. Any Fruit Loop can just walk into the crowd and say, I'm part of the protest. But your actions of that person doesn't affect the rest of the protesters. So the bill I think it's premature the bill is being proposed. There needs to be reworked a little bit more. Some fine language needs to be put in there, so we make sure we're not infringing on the protesters' rights. They're innocent.
Yeah, I would agree that I don't support it, but I would say that I would actually be interested in going in the opposite direction. I think that, as we are moving towards instituting constitutional carry in Alabama, making it easier to concealed carry without a permit, I don't think that I'm necessarily opposed with that. I think that we should also move towards making it easier to speak in Alabama. So we're going to be, if constitutional carry passes the state Senate, we're going to be in a place where we can carry a gun without a permit, but if I want to speak downtown, I still have to have a permit. I mean, I think that's totally backwards. I think we should move towards,
exactly right.
I think that we should be moving towards a maybe a constitutional speech bill where we say that make it easier for people to speak. I know that this is way down in another on basically the other side of the state, but our brothers and sisters in Brookwood have been on strike for almost a year now, and they have had basically the entire time an injunction set on them where they can only have so many people on the picket line. At first it was 10, then it was 6, then it was 5, then they banned it completely for months. Now they can only have 2 people on a picket line. I mean, that's just insane. And that's the government saying, this is the state government coming in and restricting the rights of our citizens to speak and assemble. And, I think that we should be moving in totally the opposite direction from this anti-riot bill. So, you're obviously, you're pro-union, you're pro-worker, you're interested in making the wages and working conditions better for workers in Alabama. But, we just talked about this anti-riot legislation. Republicans in Montgomery, it seems to me, seem dead set on pushing these sort of divisive culture war issues like, saying Black Lives Matter protesters are bad and they're scary and all this stuff, talking about abortion, CRT, criminalizing protest. How are you going to push your caucus, the Republican caucus, if you get elected, to focus on these bread and butter issues about wages and working conditions and how our tax money is allocated and address them in favor of working people, instead of trying to divide us on these other issues or even making things worse for working people on these economic issues? How are you going to get how will you push your caucus to help working folks in Alabama?
So all those things are very important issues, and this has been addressed on the state level and a national level. And as a legislator, and I think the general public and the society review, you have to take time to look at both point of views on that. If you start pushing one point, you're going to make someone else mad on the other point. On the issues like that, we need to focus on moving forward about protecting workers. And is these actions here, are they how are they infringing on the workers itself? I like to address, the issues that comes up the most. There's a lot of CRT theories out there, and I believe, that in a general perspective, they should be able to express their views, just like it's a free speech. But at some point, where does it go where it can't be tolerated anymore? We need to look at those and say, hey, these people need to be able to express their views just like we can express our views against those, and we need to be neutral in those conversations.
All right. But what I meant to ask, sorry if I didn't, how are you going to, because it seems to me that there is such a focus on those issues at the detriment, at the exclusion of these other bread and butter issues, of wages and working conditions and helping make sure that workers have the freedom to organize. How are you going to keep people on track, basically, because there is such an interest in these issues that don't have a material effect on people's lives, I think. How do you think that, do you have any, and it is a long way away, but do you have any ideas about how you would keep your caucus, keep the people that you're elected with on track on the important issues that are going to actually affect working people?
Yeah, so one of my biggest things I want to push is kind of upgrading infrastructure in the state. And we want to make sure that those are priority. There's a lot of issues in the state, like the CRT, religion. But what at the end of the day, what matters the most is the people that's going to be building this infrastructure, protecting their rights. That's the ones we need to protect. And also, that's what, when they're building these structures, their income, that's at the end of the day, they get a paycheck and they'll be able to support their family, regardless of if there's a protest over here. They're still protected.
All right. Terrance, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for talking to us.
All right, thank you.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.